let's have our last panel conversation. So we have with us talking about their digital transition, and I'm going to have some pointed questions. I like, to a little degree, to give you some of the brutal questions because you know how I roll. All of you guys know me really well. So I have with us Matt Federoff, who's the CIO from Vail School District, and so much more, I have to say. And Dr. Cheryl Paul, Superintendent of, let me know if I say this right, Sacaton Elementary School District, and you, James. So let's start with this first question for the three of you. And Cheryl, you can share your camera. Let me see if you're sharing. I can't tell. Oh, there you are. You're there. Okay, good. But you're on mute. I'm going to start with you, Matt. Give us a brief overview because James has already done that. What's going down in your district and what is the continuing change and what is your leadership attention on right now?
Well, how to answer that question? Because in reality, we pretty seamlessly moved back in March to remote instruction and digital content and all of that. And that was really, it wasn't as dramatic because, as James will tell you, because he was here a while ago, we went one-to-one 16 years ago, and we went all digital content 10 years ago. So we had done all those things because those were where we wanted to go. And so we could look like, I could tell you we were totally visionary in March and moved right to remote instruction. It was more just that we were already there. And so we got really lucky. All the work had paid off, as it were. So I think what we're learning is that it is possible. You can be effective at it. It's really, really hard on the human beings involved, especially hybrid. Hybrid is particularly difficult. Because when you're all remote, okay, that's one modality. And of course, when you're all in person, that's another modality. Hybrid works, but as you pointed out, Leilani, and I'm sure I'll get some amens on this one, hybrid is extremely hard on the human beings.
Yeah, just saying.
Yeah, it really is, because you almost have two different modalities of the kids who are in front of you versus the kids who are remote and trying to do those at the same time. So we long ago solved all the technical problems. We've got millions of devices out there. Our teachers have all their own laptops. We've done that forever. We've got great Wi-Fi everywhere. We sent the document cameras home with the teachers. We've done those things. The technical pieces are actually pretty easy to overcome with the amount of resources and will. Mm-hmm. The other parts, I do ever want to echo one point, Leilani, that you brought up, which I appreciate. Much as back in the early part of the previous decade, there was a lot of angst from IT about online assessment. What I said at the time was that this was a gift. Because of online assessment, we were finally going to get the resources and support for Wi-Fi everywhere and devices everywhere. And we did. Yay.
Yeah.
It took that crisis inflection point to get us there. But now, of course, it's assumed that every school building is going to have Wi-Fi everywhere out to every. Yeah. It's assumed that you're going to have devices everywhere. That's now the baseline level of assumption, which back in 2010 was merely still kind of a hypothetical dream for most places.
Yeah.
So sorry, I went in a lot of different directions there. So I hopefully we can leverage this, as you've said, to really make some substantive positive change. What we're doing right now with hybrid is really, really hard. It's hard on the human beings. So,
yeah, and that's just a true reality. And I'm just going to ping Nicole Smith, who's still on the line right now. And I think there's a couple of the vendors are still on the line right now. Make sure you guys are ready to unmute so you can make comments and ask questions too and be part of this whole panel conversation, because there's a heavy lift from single sign-on that isn't even in the majority of the districts yet. There's so many districts that aren't even doing that yet. It's just crazy. All right. So now let's go to Dr. Cheryl Paul. So good to have you with us today. So tell us kind of from a leadership view, where you kind of like your little mini story of what you've been through, and then where's your attention now?
Certainly. I think it helps to have a little bit of the demographic just to put it into context. Yes. So Sacaton Elementary School District 18, we are a rural public school district located on the Gila River Indian Reservation in south central Arizona. And the reservation is located in the Sonoran Desert, which is south of Phoenix. which another interesting fact is that we're located in District 3 of the Gila River Indian Community, which is the 4th largest reservation in the United States. And it's home to the Acamel Otham Peepash people. So our district, we partner with the tribal education to assist the community in support while servicing as a state public school entity. It's just important to have that context because there are 6 schools on the Gila River Indian Reservation. We are the only public one. So the political navigation gets somewhat interesting. Staff supports the Gila River collaborations, and we attend many of the tribal events so that we can further promote the culture in the community. We have 2 schools, elementary, pre-K 4, and a middle school, 5-8. We have approximately 646 students with 113 dedicated staff. And additionally, I really appreciated what the speaker had said previously about the interdependent collaboration, about the interdepartment collaboration. That is so true. Our transportation and food service, they have had their feet on the ground and they have worked collaboratively with their building principals more than ever before. Our continuing change, if you will, is offering equitable access to connectivity and student participation and engagement using an online platform. Prior to July of 2019, none of our students had Chromebooks or laptops at home. In 2019, we started the initiative of deploying Chromebooks in a very regimented process. We were so fortunate that we started that initiative in July of 2019 because that set us well for Friday, March 13th. The other thing you need to know is Sacaton, our students have not been back physically at all since Friday, March 13th. We need to follow Stephen R. Lewis's, the governor. He has a stay-at-home order. And so, again, that's part of the navigation that I need to work closely with ADE and continue to submit waivers and return to school plans following the guidelines of obviously CDC, ADE, health departments, and Governor Lewis.
So it's like riding a roller coaster is what you're saying.
Yes. And I apologize for being so robust, but you really have to understand the context of that up until October of 2019, our teachers did not have laptops. They had desktops.
Wow.
They were right.
Wow.
So,
they're like green screen desktops probably now. It's like super laptop and it's like,
Yes. And we do have single sign-on. Previously, I've been here for 4 years at the superintendent. I came from a very large district, Deer Valley Unified School District. Proud to have been there for 18 years. And so I was able to bring the knowledge of STEM, the knowledge of technology, and start implementing slowly. However, it has been said, and I concur, if there's some takeaways from COVID-19 that are positive, we would never have the traction that we have had to have had now with COVID-19.
Yeah.
With the initiative of the deployment of the Chromebooks to kids, I had to go and meet each of the district councils, meet with the elders, meet with the tribal council, because there was a lot of pushback regarding just the deployment. So COVID-19, unfortunately or fortunately, it allowed us to move the needle with technology integration.
Yeah, that's the big red button that James just talked about. Everyone push the button. Okay, so let's go to the hard hitting question. And then, like I said, I want some of the other people that are on the line to feel free to like pop on, make their comments and all that other stuff, or ask questions. So the hard hitting question I want to ask you is to what degree is your administration really seeing the pressure on your structure of your delivery? Like right now, Cheryl, you're still out, so you have that pressure, but I'm talking about a change in the structure, like how you're using teachers and the parents and the students to get to more of a disaggregated, highly flexible, personalized schedule type of a model? What are you hearing and seeing on the ground? We all have frustration, right? Like that's hitting everybody. What are you hearing and seeing on the ground? So, Dr. Paul, you go first, then I'm coming to you, Matt, and then back to you, James.
Sure, and please call me Cheryl. So we have right now approximately 62% of our students working online. The remaining of the students have opted out of online. Families won't even come and pick up the free Chromebook that we have to offer them. So they're utilizing learning packets, which are glorified worksheets, if you will.
That's horrible.
Right. I think that says it all. So obviously this practice, it limits students' thinking because we know that the learning takes place in the discussion and they're not participating in the discussion. Our recommendation is to use a combination, obviously, between paper and pencil and computer learning to provide students with an ultimate learning mechanism. But much of that is out of our control.
Why are they doing that? What's the...
Yeah, that's a great question and one that I respect. There's a myriad of reasons, and we have asked those questions. I've done home visits until COVID-19, until I tested positive for COVID-19 December 27th, and many of the elders have in the community. And now I don't do home visits currently. Yeah. Doing the home visits, again, a plethora of reasons. Predominantly, I'm just going to cut through the chase. When students get older, a lot of them do not matriculate to high school, unfortunately. And so there's a cycle of students to an age and they are stay at home to take care of elders. The more insightful I become as a student, the more options I may have as a student, I may not want to remain home. So that's one component. Another component is sheer fear. We're fearful. We're fearful because we don't know what technology is. We don't understand it. We had to do 3 months of training of just, I kid you not, doing literally screenshots. Okay, this is where you would turn it on. This is how you problem solve some really, really basic things. Yeah. And that had to be couched with a whole lot of love and a whole lot of guidance and ongoing support and nurturing. And we didn't always have the right people in the right place to do that. So they're scared. And then quite frankly, some families don't want our teachers using Google Docs, Google Drive, and to be able to hear what's going on in the home. And then again, a lot of our families, they have 7, 8, 9, sometimes up to 12 kids in a 2-bedroom house. And so it's just not conducive. So there is a variety of reasons. What we keep working to do as a leadership team is loving and eliminating those apprehensions. Yes. So, right. And how we do that is by offering virtual family nights. Like we take our families every month on a virtual field trip. So they can go either to the Redwood Forest, the Grand Canyon, Europe, depending on the grade level. Of course, it's aligned to the social studies standards. And so we try to do things like that to help motivate and create energy within the families.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm in a little bit of agony for on your behalf right now. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. Okay, so Matt, let's come back to you then on the same sort of question. Like, what kind of pressure for structural change are you experiencing as a district?
Well, I just want to put in the bid for the houses with lots of children. My wife and I do have 12 children, of which 9 are still at home. And so, yes, we have had the multiple Zoom things going on at once. And the college kids here and the high school kids over here and doing all that. So, yeah, that's a challenge even in our technology-rich home where I guess the cobbler's children may or may not have shoes. I don't know. So I think the structural challenge is not so much in terms of infrastructure, because it was really quite, sort of the polar opposite of what my colleague in Sacaton was dealing with, in terms of that we had a community that was fairly middle upper class. We're between two military bases. We've got this whole defense contractor. So we had a community that was technology savvy and fairly static in terms of enrollments and whatnot. Really, how to say this? We went into an entirely different instructional modality with hybrid that was challenging and that it really had never been done before. At least maybe others had done it and we hadn't. And then also always the sense that it was transitory. I think one of the things, Leilani, that when you talk to people is how much are they doing things that they have the innate sense they have to do them for now.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard to do things just for now, especially when those things themselves are really hard. And again, to reiterate, teaching hybrid is difficult. When you've got physical kids here, you've got virtual kids there, and you're supposed to manage or service both populations at the same time. That's really hard. I mean, human beings don't work that way, or at least not. And so we've heard consistently from our teachers, that is the most stressful teaching modality to be in that way. And what I'm curious about as you continue your conversations with districts is that how much of what we do now in a transitory nature to survive, to cope, or to get by till we get to this imagined, with the children coming back, and we all sort of wonder about that day and we dream about it. How much of that transitory stuff do we do poorly just because we're kind of holding on by our fingernails versus what can we leverage from that actually makes permanent, durable change that's positive?
Yeah. That's why I'm asking this question.
Yeah.
We're convinced from all the things that we're looking at is we are in a structural shift to a new model. The model is not the model you're talking about, where teachers are dual teaching.
Yeah, it's not.
Simultaneously. It's a model where the structure gets flipped on its back like a turtle, and all of a sudden the tech is doing the workflow and carrying forward a normalized path. And the teachers are synchronized for that human intersection very precisely. The tech isn't taking away the humanity. And I'm not talking about competency-based learning, because most people can't take that up anyway. They're not going to. It's not the structure of schools today for most of them. I'm talking about a change in the schedule and the logistics of use of time and space, so that people can be anywhere, kids can be anywhere. Any modality, right? Except for, of course, they won't even use their Chromebook. Sorry about that, Dr. Cheryl. But, I'm talking about a real, let's change from the old bureaucracy and the class and grade and blah, 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 blah. Let's have a new model. That's really the structural shift we think is inevitable because of outside pressures, not what's inside. And if people are holding on by their fingernails like that, Matt, that's what you guys should be talking about as leaders. Like, maybe normal's not coming back. What is the future? How are we baby stepping our way to get there? Well,
then that's going to be really, really, what's challenging from a leadership perspective is that our teachers genuinely like to be with students. They genuinely, you don't get in this line of work for any other reason, really. And I was a classroom teacher for 8 years as well. I genuinely like teenagers. It's almost like a Stockholm syndrome, really. Once you spend enough time with them, you're like, okay, I like you here.
Well, you have a bunch of them right now.
I do, yeah, I have my own. But so and I think, Leilani, in your model, it may not even speak to this as well. When our kindergarten teachers are in tears because they're teaching over Zoom and they say, I miss the children, that adults do this for a variety of reasons, mostly for altruism, but also because they like it. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. Nobody does kindergarten teacher who doesn't like it, because that's its own reality doing K. Okay. So if you cannot satisfy that genuine human need for connection, it doesn't matter what your model is. It simply doesn't work.
Yeah. And that's why I'm talking about hybrid logistics is the future, because the overwhelm of the teachers with tech as augmentation only isn't working. Walking away from tech altogether is never going to work anymore. So how do we make this a precision human intersection and preserve the humanity by having tech do even more work. So it's sort of like the way out is the way through. You have to go all the way. And what does that look like? So that's really, okay. So James, let's bring you back into this loop and let's talk about what pressure you're seeing on the structure of your delivery model.
So I'm reminded with Cheryl and Matt's comments about the whole, about the notion of personalized learning. And what I mean by personalized, delivering personalized teaching and learning. Going back to our customers, our constituency, the pressure structurally is this is not a consensus. It would have been easier for, if I could say to you, well, Leilani, our parents want the schools open today. Some of them do. Some of them want the schools closed until not, in person, until I don't know when, because they don't feel safe, particularly going into the building. Others want a highly personalized model that works for them. So one, there is no consensus, but at the same time, that in itself is a tremendous opportunity, because if we collectively in K-12 can figure out how to standardize, if you will, the delivery of personalized learning models that we have seen proliferate during this whole pandemic, I think we would be collectively better off.
Yeah.
Rather than constantly talking about, why are we losing kids? Kids are leaving, for this reason or that. If we offer at a highest level the structure that's put in place where it's a buffet of exceptional teaching and learning options for your individual student that prepares them for a future ready future, then I think we'll be in better shape. So that challenge is, bottom line is, in a district with over 40,000 students, we do not have a consensus of what our constituency wants, which adds pressure to offering a structure to address everyone's needs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I don't think you're going to get consensus, but I do know that in the March through June, when we were tracking the consumer market spend, March through June, it upticked by over $1 billion on the consumer side in digital learning activities for K through 12. That was the companies selling sites. They also sell maybe to K-12, but a lot of them are the little apps and applets.
Mm-hmm.
So the consumer market is waking up more and more. Those are parents and grandparents who, when the pandemic came and schools were still shut down, they did a mad scramble and they're like, I got to get my kid not to just like goof off. I need him to learn something. What's grade appropriate for my 8-year-old, right? And they went on the markets and they found stuff by Googling around, and they're getting this quality UI UX. And some of them are asking themselves, why do we need that? What?
And that,
why did we need retail stores? We can just buy it off of Amazon or Walmart.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's one of my, just press the hot button with me. That's one of my bones of contention, because a parent comes to me, I found this really fantastic app. I think you guys could use it. Okay. Oh, yeah. When you try to scale that, then the fun begins. Okay. So that's what I mean by, will it play in Peoria? Because sometimes you'll have certain entities come to you and say, parents are buying this app. We represent ABC company, and, parents are buying this app. It's so popular. Then you try to scale it. Then you try to add rostering, and then all of a sudden let the games begin.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's what I mean by, will it play in Peoria? So,
a lot of it's not built for you. It's built for the consumer market.
But they won't tell you that. See, a lot, it will be misrepresented oftentimes as, yes, it will.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the deal, right? Little fakery that goes on. Let's not talk about that. Let's not name names, right? We know who they are.
Right. We're not going to.
Yeah. Okay. So back at round 2 for you guys. And I'm checking if any of my other participants, including my vendor people, if you guys want to unmute and pop on and ask a question. It's okay. We love to have real live dialogue. This is super fun. So my next one is really about, I'm going to go to question 4 that we had on the earlier.
Leilani,
questions. Yeah.
I'd be happy to say something as a vendor.
Yeah. Yeah. Who is this talking?
This is Laura with Text Help.
Okay, cool. Good to have you.
We make Google Chrome applications, Read and Write, Equatio, RaiQ, Fluency Tutor.
Okay, so let's have you make a comment that's a little bit in line with this whole logistics issue.
Well, what I just heard, one of the things I wanted to say about that is there are companies out there that you can absolutely have that conversation that it's not equity as far as the pricing guide, how you scale it. But there are some smaller companies like us where the benefit actually ends up weighing better on the side of the smaller Peoria districts because it's easier to license those domains. And I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. It's definitely when you get to the level of James with that number of kids, it's like, James, you probably were doing this maybe during the pandemic, like we heard from Atlanta and Houston Public. They were like, heavy traffic warning. We just logged 92,000 kids into your software at 8 a.m. Are you ready?
Right.
So those
Exactly.
companies are like, like,
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's been a learning experience, you know. And we've got some great partners, and we know that people are doing the best they can. It's just one of those interesting, you know, learning opportunities that you come across in life. So
Yeah. And there are a lot of pieces and parts to this. So I think the way I think of it, and I'm coming back to you, Dr. Paul, with the next part of this on, putting it all together.
Themselves.
Yeah. And the next part is really about lost achievement and motivation. So you got a whole swath of kids that are losing everything right now. They got nothing. What are you thinking with in terms of getting that back? Coming out of this, you got this swath and that swath. Can you talk to both?
Yes, certainly. So our leadership team, we made a pledge to one another, if you will, probably in June or July, when we realized that with the governor's ordinance, executive orders out there, we probably wouldn't come back in person this entire year. That's what we planned on. That's what we thought would happen. So we really want to continue to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And there's so much trauma for our students that our pact was, look, we're not going to be Pollyannas. There's going to be learning gaps. There are. Our students on the onset are typically 1 to 2 years behind. So now imagine, right?
Yeah.
So what we're focusing on are not the gaps, because it's a given. So we're focusing on what can we do that aligns with our vision and mission, that aligns with their HIMDOC, their way of life, and that will motivate more the family and engage the kids. And so tonight, beginning at 5, from 5 to 7, we have our annual culture night, where all of our special area teachers are using cross-curricular with ELA and math and sharing with families how they're bringing in the culture. And they're able to do that by networking with elders and community members. So we're taking a different approach. We're providing as many, I don't want to say normal, because what is that, right? And it's never go back to what it was.
Yeah, normal's gone. Yeah.
Right. You can't unknow your knowledge. And there are a lot of beauties to where we are. We just have to keep seeing them. So we're providing as many typical activities virtually as we can. And we're trying to engage and encourage our families that way. The learning gaps, they're real, they're prevalent. When we come back physically, which will be in August of next year, we're really going to have to do a stellar job implementing MTSS. But right now, we're going to keep the learning moving forward, knowing that we're not advancing, and that's humbling. That kills me as an educator, but I have to recognize that. We're taking care of the heart because a lot of our kids aren't showing up because they literally are out digging graves, and that is their reality. So we have to approach this differently. So our commitment is to love, guide, and support our kids and keep reminding them of hope and keep reminding them of everything they have, so that they don't give up. So it's more than just lost achievement, right? We don't want our kids to lose themselves.
Yeah. 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 You know what I love about everything you just said is you're not an autocrat. You're
No.
recognizing. I love that about you. You're recognizing the beauty of the population and backwards engineering education to fit them. I think that's really beautiful. I grew up in northern Minnesota, right near the Red Lake Indian Reservation. So in my high school, we had the option of taking the Sioux or Ojibwe languages. And we had annual cultural fest for the Sioux and Ojibwe tribes. And that was a really big deal to us because our other options were like French and blah, and who cares about those? So it was a big deal. And acknowledging your local populations, there's too much, autocrat authority, blah, 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 coming down. And I'm really glad that you're doing that. And I'm really glad you're thinking the way that you are. So I know we have some comments coming in from some other people too, but I want to give Matt and James both the chance to answer the same question and issue. Matt. Are you still there, Matt?
I am still here, but there were like multiple issues coming down here.
Oh, okay.
So about the overwhelm thing?
Take the one you want about how, we can do the overwhelm thing. How are you dealing with that?
No, not really. I think, we've lived this reality now since going on a year at this point. And I'm certain problems or certain challenges have come up to where we're like, it would be interesting, I think, to talk about certain questions that have come to the surface and what vendors have. Truthfully, I think solutions that were offered when we started this won't be the ones that we look at now because we've had a year to learn about stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I need another email about how are you responding to COVID challenges. I think my inbox is pretty much totally saturated with those. Mm-hmm. I'd really like to talk about as you are passionate about what persists from this in that way. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because now there has to be strategies for dealing with the lost achievement. You don't have as big of a problem with that as Dr. Paul does. She's having to have a whole raft of different angles.
Although we definitely are when AZ2 comes out, AZM2 comes out, and when the results come from that, we're gonna see.
Yeah, I know. I've been talking to one of the state level governments, and they're like, we're just sitting back and waiting for the districts that are in self-destruct right now, so that we have the, they have to do the big rush in like the cavalry. Okay, so James, what are you thinking with in terms of lost achievement, student motivation strategies in that area?
So strategies, and I think, obviously, Dr. Paul was so eloquent. We got to remember, kids are traumatized. Okay, yes. They're doing a lot of stuff. So, having said that, one of the things that we're putting in place is we're recognizing that there is tremendous loss. There were kids that were behind before. That was day camp compared to what they are now. Okay, so we have pulled out all the stops for our plan. Tentatively, is to continue and leverage Saturday school instead of having summer school for 2 sessions. We're going to have 3, and we're going to run day and night sessions. And we're going to have credit recovery as well as opportunities utilizing our online platform for students to get ahead, in addition to quote unquote in-person summer school. Or traditional, if you will. So remote options, a hybrid option for summer school, Saturday school, and 2 shifts for 6 weeks.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we just wall to wall with it, So
I hear everyone talking about what we're going to do for the students who aren't passing or aren't doing well. But what are we going to do with the students that are thriving in this environment and don't want to come back into the building because there's no distractions and they're extremely focused and like being online?
Is
And
that
then
you, Barbara?
yes.
I can. We're actually curious about. There are a whole group of students who suddenly have realized they can go directly, like they're sophomores or juniors in high school, and they're just going to go right to our local community college. They don't need a high school diploma. They don't care about a high school diploma. I mean, to a certain extent, the emperor has no clothes, because our PIMA, our local community college, will simply enroll them, and they just keep right on rolling through and then transfer to a four-year university. So I think, to speak to once you've gotten out of the habit of going to school, suddenly all sorts of other possibilities present themselves.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what are we going to do about, like, I have a colleague of mine whose daughter started pre-K. This is all she knows. And she loves it. So when we go back in the building, her daughter's not going to understand the norms of being in the building, and she's not going to want to educate her standing in front of her talking. She's going to want that computer access and the things they did online. How are we working towards making that happen? Because it's funny, the pandemic showed me personally that America isn't as 21st century as I thought it was, and every school district isn't equal. Even within its own school district, with what they have or what they do or what they're implementing. I'm blessed. I'm actually in the DMV, which is the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, but I like to know what's going on in other parts of the counties or the world. That's why I signed up for this, to see what you guys are doing. And I didn't realize how blessed we are in this area, because getting laptops out to our kids really wasn't hard because most of them already had it. Now, because I live in an area that is considered rural, suburban, and urban, some people didn't have Wi-Fi, but we solved that problem pretty quickly. So I didn't realize the rest of the country wasn't like my school system. Does that make sense?
Yes, and Barbara, just to interject a little bit real quick, I used to teach back in the day in Prince George's County. So
I work in Prince George's County as a librarian.
How about that? Small world. Yes. So yes, Arizona and Prince George's County, two totally different. Well, they're different, but they're similar. And to get to your question, I think that's what we mean by, are you guys still there? Are you?
Yeah,
okay, because my internet is so bad. Okay. So I think that's what we mean by learning from what we've leveraged during the pandemic and recognizing the fact that these models will continue well after this whole situation is over with, because in order to meet and exceed the expectations of people like the daughter that's in pre-K now, her expectation is, what is this person standing in front of me for, and why are the desks in rows? What is this? What is this about? Okay, let's remember, not too long ago, normal was a newspaper boy throwing a piece of paper, throwing a rubber band, throwing it on a bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'm still trying to figure out, what is it when you go to like WashingtonPost.com? What is that? You can't call it a newspaper because there's no paper involved. So what is it? It's got so. What is school? What is a classroom? What is it? What does that mean? So I think that here again, these models that we have, that were, some of whom were in place, but we've increased the wherewithal to be able to deliver them. I think our expertise as a group of educators is in fact growing to deliver at a higher level different models of instruction that better reflect a mature 21st century.
And if I may, James, I absolutely concur. Barbara, the other thing that I would add is that's from the learner's perspective. From the teacher's perspective, I can assure you, our 34 certified staff members, they'll never teach like they did before. All of them have become Google certified. All of them now, again, there's no way they would teach without having a laptop. They have what in my previous district, we literally had like 10 years ago, they have now. So they have and continue to advance because it's broadening their horizons. So quite frankly, I don't see my pre-K teachers going back and teaching how they taught before. So I think that is on the teacher's end and also the learner's end, but there definitely is going to need to be, to your point, some very specific onboarding so that there's rich dialogue about cognition that's going to need to take place, having people come back and have classrooms look differently. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also really like what Barbara, you said about the fact that we've got a missing socialization aspect in the youngest crowd. So I want Matt to comment on that, because Matt has 12 kids. So if anyone can talk about how you're going to fix that.
Well, again, my great passion, besides my Mrs. Federoff, obviously, is that, you know, if you think about your formative school experiences, they're around teachers, not subjects. When you think about, you know, when you remember your experiences, you remember teachers by name. You may not remember the classes that you took. And so whatever we do to preserve that fundamental part of the transaction, that's an irreducible element. There are some segment of our students who are autodidacts, who can teach themselves, can direct themselves, can do those things, and are fine being at home. I don't think that's the normative human experience.
Yeah, and I would like to have Nicole Smith on mute too, because Nicole, we've been talking about the structural shift, and I would like to hear from you how much you're seeing the load coming through your company's work in terms of carrying some of the complexity now, because I think that what we've been talking about all along here is we are in a structural shift of the teaching and learning pattern. And if anybody can make a comment about that right now, it'd be you. Nicole, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Nicole Smith with ClassLink.
Can you hear me, Leilani?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Full disclosure, I have COVID and I've kept myself on mute so you don't hear me like hacking. But absolutely. So really, first off, hats off to all of you guys for what you're doing. And I think this is a great example of how every district has a little bit different approach, right? Different, constituents and people that we're trying to work with and to meet those needs, but there are always some common themes. And absolutely, if you're not familiar with ClassLink, we are nationwide and we partner with about 1,800 districts in the US right now. And some of the things that we are hearing from individuals like yourself, right, is how to make it apparent for teachers to be able and to go in to see who's engaged, who's doing what, how do they make these instructional shifts. And for the vast majority of districts, I'm kind of over the West. So for my region, almost none of my districts have gone back to school since it was first stopped March 13th. And everyone is doing some type of hybrid model, and just seeing the pressure on them and having to, quickly find, programs that are meeting those needs. And like you said, supporting your teachers and your staff in how to use those tools and what they do. And so one of the things and the trends that we have seen and that we're doing at ClassLink is making sure that we have those reports, that we're able to work with kind of the theme that Ideato was talking about this morning, and I'm sorry, I just spaced on, I know his last name's McKelvey, Gavin, maybe, was talking about this morning about interoperability and how important it is to make sure that everyone within the departments of the district are working together, right, with a common theme and clear goals and visions. And I'm hearing from all three of you guys, right, that those are things that you're trying to do in your districts. And I know that others that are listening to this as well, those are things that we're striving for. And Leilani, I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think things will ever go back to exactly how they were before. And James, I'm going to pick on you because I heard a lot in your presentation that you were saying beforehand, but really being able to work with the shift, right? And some of these new things, and being able to have this new focus. And it was something that I addressed yesterday, of a shift in priorities, a shift of new heroes, really making sure that everyone, not just within the school district, but that our public and our lawmakers were aware of the importance of equity and access. And, Dr. Paul, I know how challenging it can be when you're on a reservation. I grew up near one as well, up in Idaho, and there's a lot of unique challenges that come with that. So again, kudos to all of you for doing that. But I think we're all right. I think this is going to be the new norm. As a parent myself, sorry, Matt, you have won the contest. I only have 3 kids, but I absolutely can see the difference. One child is flourishing with just doing all hybrid. She is living her best life. She loves it. She wants to do all remote and has no desire to go back. And then my older daughter, really feels like she's missing out, and she misses that social interaction and being on campus. So I feel as a parent, we've got to be able to present options, to be able to be competitive and to meet those different needs, and to take education where we need to go. So again, kind of those themes of interoperability and communication and working together.
Mm-hmm. Options. Love that. Love how many options, James, you guys are offering. I love the approach by Cheryl. Like, your care factor is huge. And then Matt, you've got some unique challenges too, because achievement is going to be like a thing for you guys. But that flexibility, this shift in structure, the normal's not really coming back. I think did we all say we're on the same page? Did we all just upvote that? Yeah, normal is not really normal anymore. I think so. I think that's what we said, right?
What would be fascinating, and Leonie, I think, assuming you guys stay in it and keep doing what you're doing, is sort of, okay, so this, on day 0, what is persistent 5 years from now? Mm-hmm. What is persistent 10 years from now? Because, we thought that one-to-one instruction would be a real pivot point. We did it back in 2005. Kind of, sort of. We thought, pervasive Wi-Fi and devices everywhere would be a real pivot point. This pivot point was thrust upon us. And so I am really curious to see what persists. That's a little out past my event horizon. This is year number 30 for me. Mm-hmm. But the other point that will be very interesting to watch, especially if you're in K-12 education, is that we now have teachers who are our teachers who were our students when we went one-to-one 15 years ago. And so they came to us with a certain set of expectations. We will have a batch of teachers in our classrooms in 4 years or 5 years who came out of this crucible. And so what will their tendencies, their desires, their expectations be? First off, on an IT perspective, those are teachers who are going to have a very high set of expectations for me and in IT. They're going to expect things to work a certain way, and IT is going to have to deliver to them. Yeah. And they're going to expect a certain amount of resources in terms of what they get in the classroom and what they need to do their jobs, but the way they may be actually the ones who drive the process. Mm-hmm. Because they are coming out of this experience as learners. And then they'll go to college, which will feel like a total downshift because they'll be back with an adult in front of the room talking to them. And then they'll come back to us and want to be teachers, and that will be very interesting to watch.
Exactly. Okay, so also final thoughts from you, Cheryl. I think you must be on mute. Cheryl?
There you go. Thank you. I think that it's been said. I do. I think that it has already been said, and I do concur with Matt's analysis in that it really is going to be that workforce that's going to drive the functionality of the day-to-day operations in the future. And we don't know what that will look like, right? But we're going to do our darndest to stay laser-like focused and have our toe in best practices so that we can continue to be as proactive and ready as we can for our staff, our students, and our community. And Matt, I agree with you. I think one of the hardest positions, challenging, I'll say that way, in the future, I think it's going to be that of IT.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are going to be the little rock stars. Not that you aren't already, but like, super duper duper. Okay, so James, final thoughts.
I agree with Cheryl and Matt. I think everything's been said. I think that I'm just curious listening to this conversation. I wonder 100 years ago, or when, did teachers gather around, I don't know, a well somewhere and say, they got this new thing. It's called an automobile,
Mhm.
or now I hear that people can fly, or they have a man. So I wonder, in those conversations, did somebody say, well, things are not going to be normal again, but then normal changes depending on when you are. So it's normal for us to be on Zoom and look like the Brady Bunch, but was that, well, we don't look exactly like the Brady Bunch, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So,
I love it. I love it.
Right.
I love
So
it. I'll be jammed.
was that, I wonder how many times, yeah, exactly. Assign characters. I'll be Robert Reed. There you go.
Yeah.
Because I get often mistaken for him all the time.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, over the years in education, did people make that same observation that we're making now, that we're not going back to normal? Well, that is normal by definition, because the rate of change has increased exponentially over time. Therefore, it is normal, even though it doesn't seem like it to us.
Mm-hmm.
There was a point in there somewhere, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I will leave you my piece of advice from the Learning Council right now, just looking at all the data, is look, don't listen. That's how I manage. I look, like, see what people are actually doing, see their reactions. Don't listen. If you listen only as a leader, you get an earful. But if you look, oftentimes it leads to the truth of what has to be done next. And I'm also looking at the outside trends, right? Like travel, hugely cut. I don't think that's coming back. I have most superintendents tell me, you're going to go out of state. No, you're not, because those other states, they can't be trusted. Like, we're in this moment of, we used to aggregate, we used, in districts, we used to, like, let's get everybody into the same high school, and they had to bus from 50 miles away. Now it's like, no, let's put up a parents over development pod in somebody's garage over here and a retail outlet over there. And we're in a backward flow of the trends that we were in for 50 years. And it happened in 1 year. And we have to watch that. So it's a look, don't listen moment. And so that's my final words. Thank you, Matt, for being with us today. Hope to hear more from you. Awesome work. And dictionary for everyone over there. And thank you, Cheryl. Awesome. I'm proud of you as a leader. I think it's awesome. I don't know if I have the stature to say that, but I'm going to say it. Good to have you. And then James, awesome. Keep up the good work. Especially all the options, more options, more, you push the red button, it's never going back. Okay.
Thank you, Leilani.
Okay, everyone that's in attendance, thank you guys for being here. Bye for now until we zoom in for next year, or you attend one of our other Edu Jedi meetings to get your groove on as an Edu Jedi. Okay. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Everyone, take care. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.